Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, it's an honor to have you here. Make sure you continue to stay in touch by hitting that subscribe button as well as bell notification icon to get up to date on interviews coming your way. For those of you who have been here before, we love having you. Well, during the holiday times, it's a time where many people experience a lot of grief coming up to the surface. We feel that loss at our table, that empty chair, and we don't know where our loved ones is or not sure, feel maybe alone. Well, today's guest has been, an evidential psychic medium for several decades. His reputation is incredible, and he'll really share a lot of his insights on our loved ones, where they are, particularly as it relates to this particular time. So our next guest is psychic medium Jeffrey Wands, who's also an incredible best-selling author, radio host, intuitive, and he's been doing this work a long time. So I know you're going to get a lot of information from the wisdom of Jeffrey Wands and all of his work and what he's been able to find and discover within his intuitive, psychic, and mediumistic capabilities. Without further ado, we welcome psychic medium Jeffrey Wands on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Jeffrey Wands, it's a big honor to have you here on my channel as a guest. I know we've just, did a recent event together, which was amazing. And, I have a great deal of admiration for you and your work, so I couldn't thank you enough. But for those viewers who are maybe new to my channel or new to some of this stuff, can you tell us a little bit about your work and how it began? Because you're, been doing this stuff for decades as a, medium, intuitive, and well, you could probably speak for yourself a lot better than I could. So just
it was kind of something I fell into. I didn't necessarily plan it. I had experiences when I was a kid where I would get into trouble because I would say stuff and those things would start happening. I used to see my great grandmother, who I never knew who she was, and she used to appear at the side of my bed all the time. And when I would get into trouble, I would say to my mother, well, your grandmother said, you did this, this, and this. Why should I be punished? Of course, it didn't work because I got slapped and I got, into trouble. But that kind of started my journey. And then it took me a while until probably college before I really got comfortable. And I used to do tarot readings at that time. And I used to sit with all the sorority girls and help them with their love life and, proceed to go through, different increments of things. And then I would always see spirit. I always had a spirit guide that would come to me. He was extremely loud and never really knew the fact that we're on Earth time and they're on dead time. So he would come at 4 a.m. or come at 5 a.m. right before the sun would come up and tell me the sun was coming up. And I would pull the pillow over my head and tell him, I'm not interested. I want to go back to sleep. So, it started that process. I started doing radio probably early 90s. Actually, the funniest thing, I did AM first. And I remember at that time, Bob Grant, who was a very famous radio host in New York going back years ago. His real name was Bob Gianelli, but he went as Bob Grant. He had me on the show. I was on the show with him for 2 hours. He basically read the newspaper and let me do whatever I wanted. And I took phone calls. And that's kind of like how it started. I went through the whole process of doing radio for years. I was on LAR, and we did a show on Sunday nights. It was crazy because we used to have guests. We had all kinds of crazy people on, which was fun. We had a guy who channeled Eleanor Roosevelt, who told me that Eleanor Roosevelt liked techno music. And that was, of course, in the 90s, late 80s. And that was entertaining. But we would have all different guests, and it was always a pleasure. Now I'm on Walk, which I do a show on Sunday nights called Psychic Sundays. I'm an author. I've done major TV. I've gone from the show with Ty Pennington, where they had me come in and clear a house that they were fixing because there was a spirit in the house that was causing all kinds of ruckus. So, we've done different things. I did Maury for a long time. I probably did Maury, I think, 16 years. So, But I'm not the father. So A little bit of
Yeah, I saw you recently had a profound reading with Maury that just brought him to tears. It was very moving
well,
and
after
reading.
all these years of me going on the show, and he kind of didn't really believe, he allowed me to sit down with him and read him, and his brother had just passed. And
Wow.
his brother came through and it brought him to tears. And it was interesting. You know, it was kind of a validation because he's an old hardcore news guy. And, you
Hmm.
know, I don't believe in this garbage, but you know, for all the years I have to say was on the show, they were super good to me. We did Missing Kids, we did Ghosts, you name it, we did it. He would send me all over the place. So we had a lot of fun. I'll never forget. I was just telling somebody this story when we had did a shoot. I think we were in Kansas City, and it was like one of these local airlines that flew into LaGuardia. It's probably late 90s. No, it's probably, I'm trying to think, was it late 90s? Yeah, it was late 90s because it was before 2000. And we had an instance. I say to the producer and I say to the camera guy, I don't want you to get nervous, but they're going to take the pilot off. He's drunk. And they look at me like with five heads. And I'm like, I'm telling you, somebody's telling me is in my ear. They're telling me not to panic. They're going to take this guy off in handcuffs. And exactly that's what they did.
Wow.
So totally freaked out, you know, and my camera guy, you know, was like, I don't believe in this nonsense. You know, you get that. But every time we ever did a shoot or anytime we did anything that was tied into TV, the batteries would drain. We would have issues because the spirit would get kind of rowdy. I mean, I remember also we did a shoot. If you really want to check out a haunted place and you're into Philly cheesesteaks, go to the Eastern Penitentiary. We did that in Philadelphia.
Wow.
It is one of the oldest, I was going to call it a cemetery. It's kind of like a cemetery, but it's not. It's a prison. Al Capone was there for his tax evasion. They have an area in the prison. Granted, we were there at night. You have to get special access because we were doing TV. And you're able to see shadow people. And shadow people are basically spirits that have not transcended to the other side, and they're caught between. And you look down a hallway or you look down a thing, and sure enough, you see these shadows running across. It's pretty intense. And I remember I went with my camera guy. We went upstairs, and he was the one I had done a bunch of stuff with. And he worked for Maury. And I remember him saying to me, I can't breathe. Like somebody's got a hand around my throat. Happened to be, we were in the murderer's row where none of the people ever got out or were, you know, paroled. So they decided they were going to play with him. So he went down to his knees. So we had, you know, different instances of that. You kind of learn, you kind of experience. I used to love, we used to like pin movies into when I would be on. There was an old movie about vampires in an Alaska town. I forget what it was called, but that was one. Then they redid the Stephen King one, Firestarter. So we used to get like do stuff like that, which was a lot of fun because you get the movie, you know, you get the movie premiere. So I mean, I enjoy doing Maury. It was sad because a lot of this stuff, unfortunately, involved, you know, stuff that we didn't need, which basically was the fact that poor kids were missing, and a lot of the kids that disappeared tied into trafficking.
Wow.
And that was, you know, that was not good. I mean, I worked on, I remember they sent me to Cleveland, and I said at the time, all three of those girls that were kidnapped were all interconnected, which they were. And that was one where the girls escaped and the girl ended up being pregnant and had a baby, and the guy was a bus driver with his brother, and we were right in that vicinity because I remember sitting with the family and I'm like, no, she's not passed, she's local, she's nearby. I mean, I don't think you get more nearby than that.
Wow. I know, you know, I've certainly worked with you in our workshop together, and I've seen you on lives. I mean, your gift is extraordinary where the information comes like, you know, like spot onto that person. It's very quick, and clearly it's a gift. Was there a point in time where it felt more of a burden than a gift, or was there like a point in time that allowed you to understand, no, this is something that I need, that I'm supposed to do in this life? This is not.
Oh, I fought it. I totally fought it. You remember when I had kids, you know, my kids are older now. It was hard. I was worried about my kids, like, and how they would take it. You know, my kids used to have fun with it. in the day, you know, Miss Cleo with the psychic hotline, and we
Right.
ended up actually, you know, getting a golden retriever and naming her Cleo after Miss Cleo from the psychic hotline. But it was hard. I fought it for a lot of years. I would say the last 10 years, I'm very comfortable with it. The fastness and the ability to jump in and jump out, like I do, comes from working on TV and also working on radio, because there's a lot of psychics and mediums that do radio that can't do the process. You know, like they have to take a while. With me,
Right.
it's like everybody lines up, everybody jumps the line, everybody's ready to come in.
Yeah,
And
it's just incredible to see like how quick it comes to you, and in one
yeah.
transition to another. It's incredible. I mean, you read the whole room when we were together, every single person. It was
Well, I like to be fair. I mean,
amazing.
some
Yeah.
mediums will, you know, maybe do 1 or 2 or 3 readings.
Right.
I mean, I try to give everybody some sense of experience or some sort of sense of connection. And that makes it a little bit harder on an emotional level for me, because I take on the wear and tear. But I'm much more comfortable with it now. I enjoy it. I'm much more at peace with it. I actually put a little humor in once in a while, because it kind of lightens it up a little bit, because it's so intense when you lose somebody, especially when you're dealing with parents of bereaved kids, and you know, you're dealing with all different things. It's a nonstop thing. I mean, especially during COVID, all these people had no ability or no aspect to get closure with their loved ones, because they were in the hospital, and it was super, super heavy duty, especially on an emotional level, you know, for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure for you, it's just beyond words to see some of the potential exhalations that people have, to know that their loved one is in an okay place, that they're still connected. You know, to get that validation, I know, is a very significant part of the grief journey for many. You know, as we know, belief can work, certainly, with grief. Now, you mentioned your own family seemed to like not be so certain about your gift, and I see sometimes a lot of people will describe themselves as third generation psychics, fourth generation psychics. Do you feel, you know, the psychic gift is a part of a brain chemistry thing, like they talk about the pineal gland in the brain, or is it just when it's
No,
intergenerational, it's a part of like your soul family's
no, I
kind of
think it
mission?
does. My grandmother on my mother's side was born blind,
Mm,
and she could connect with your voice.
mm,
And she was a little dramatic, like her hand would shake if
mm,
there was negative stuff. And I remember as a kid, she would touch somebody's hand and boom, the information would start coming
mm,
through. And I was like so fascinated by it. And, you know, my grandmother was very in tune, very intense that way.
mm,
So I definitely think it's intergenerational.
mm,
But I mean, with some people, the only thing that scares me today is everybody all of a sudden wants to become a psychic. So they think
mm,
it's so glorious to become a psychic. So
mm.
they take a class, they take a couple of classes, and right away they're like, hey, you know, I'm raring to go. I'm going to put my shingle out. I'm qualified. And it makes me nervous sometimes, because, you know, I've had experiences. I had somebody one time, I'll never forget this, a young couple came to me and she's like, I don't know what to do.
Mm,
We went to this woman, and this woman told me that my dead grandmother said that my husband's going to be dead in 2 years.
mm,
How do we prevent it? And I'm like, listen, I'm not a doctor, and from what I hear, that's not correct information.
mm,
And then she said to me, she said the only thing that threw me out, she was very accurate, but at the end of the reading, she wanted to know if I wanted to buy um, insurance, life insurance. So I started
mm.
laughing to myself. I'm like, if that isn't telling you something's, you know, a hoax or something's not correct, then you should know by now.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point. There's a lot of people who will take advantage of vulnerable emotions, and I think they say like 80 to 85% of people who practice this are not like yourself, evidential or credible or
You
have a
know, agree.
reputation. They just call their names, they call themselves psychics, and that's
Well,
and
that's
get
what I
people by.
said. I mean, you get this fast grade of, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I get that, but it's not, you know, it's not
Mm,
nice. And, you know, it makes it bad for everyone else that does it in the field. And they're just looking, it's like with the hotlines. I can't tell you how many requests I get.
mm,
Please join our hotline. You know, we see you're a valued medium. Like,
mm,
why would I do a hotline? And all the years I did this, I had people come to me, you'll have your own psychic hotline.
mm.
And I'm like, no, thank you. That's not who I am. It's one thing to do sessions online. It's another thing to do other sessions, but I'm very cautious about the fact that you don't want your name out there in the wrong way.
Integrity is a big part of your work, I know, and it's
It is.
something you have to go to bed at night with. Yeah.
But you're always going to get somebody that says, hey, this, hey, that.
Right.
And, it's part of what's there. I mean, I laugh when I go back and I think about things, and, it's definitely the fact that you get these people, and it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not into ego. What I do, and it's part of my mission. And I try to do as much as I can, and I can help people up to a point. And then you get the other people, well, you charge. I'm like, well, why shouldn't I charge? This is how I make my living. I'm not exuberant from the point, like there are some mediums that are ridiculous with the prices because they price themselves right out.
Right. For your amount of years that you've have been doing this and your credibility and your gift, I think it's reasonable. Some people are like thousands and have just started, which is ridiculous.
I know. Well, they know how to market themselves. It's funny. Years ago, there was this guy on the Spanish channel. His name was Walter Mercado.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Okay, and he used to dress up, and he would do the Spanish horoscopes. And anyone of the Latin culture that watched like Univision or any of those channels, would watch him. And he eventually, got his own psychic hotline, and he used to be on Howard Stern a couple of times. And, he did some things, and it was sad. And I ended up actually meeting him in the late 90s in Miami. Wow. And I had this client they owned. It was this gay couple, these two guys, and the mother cooked, and it was a little Italian restaurant. And we happened to go there, and Walter's there. And I met him, and he like looked at me, and he's like, remember, it's a gift. Whatever you do is a gift. In the meantime, the poor guy, his manager took all his money. He ended up being penniless, but he was just an amazing intuitive and an astrologer and the whole bit. But you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And do that stuff. And it's like, and you're not going to please everybody. In my years of experience, I know like somebody got mad at me. I said one time, I'm like, listen, you need to prepare. This person's going to pass. But I don't want to hear that. I mean, that's life. Unfortunately, you don't want to hear something, then you shouldn't necessarily come to me.
Right. It's not when people come to you, it's not so much what they want to hear, but the spirits will give them what they need to hear. Which is hard. It's funny you're mentioning Walter because I think Netflix might have done a big documentary on him a couple of years ago.
I highly recommend it. It's about 2 years ago, but
yeah,
he was amazing. And the Miami Museum made him part of the Miami culture because he would come out and, Aries and Capricorn. And it was all in Spanish, but it was very dramatic. And he had these robes.
His clothing was amazing. Like, you don't see anyone dressed like that.
But he was from Puerto Rico. He was originally a dancer.
Right.
And then he got into astrology, and he started, reading charts. And anyone that grew up in the Latin culture and watched, Spanish TV knew who he was because he did this whole dramatic thing. Right. He came out with the hair and the whole bit. But it was like, it was interesting, but it became very sad because of the fact that all his money was taken by his manager. He made he made millions and millions of dollars during this time. They did, his hotline. They did all these things, and he would make appearances, and people would throw roses at him. It was like crazy. He was like a god.
I mean, you see that throughout history, whether that's Edgar Cayce, and when he was going under, they would use him and his gift for gambling purposes, and that's when he started to get sick. So I think when you're being used for the wrong reasons by people around you with any walk of life, it will take you to the ground. It's meant for other reasons, not to be taken advantage of. And so you certainly recommend people who have the gift to have those boundaries and to be cautious about who you're around, what they're trying to take from you.
It's hard. It's very hard on people with losses, and I try to explain to people it's not convenient sometimes when you lose somebody because of the emotional part. We're not ready. You don't get to the hospital in time, and so and so passes, and you make it about you, and you don't understand. Hey, this is the way that soul picked to go, and it's not about you. And it's like we know. I mean, I really believe that we pick our time to go. In my years of doing this, I have no doubt that we picked that time.
Yeah, it's hard for a lot of people because you watch movies and you think it's exactly like a Hollywood movie, the ending, and it's never,
Yeah.
it's never smooth like that. And
Yeah, I
so,
never liked what was that movie with Robin? Was it Robin Williams where there was a suicide or something? It's an
trying to,
older it's an older movie. I forget what it's called, but it dealt with the hereafter. I mean, the Matt Damon one that's more recent that Clint
talking
Eastwood.
about the Hereafter
Yeah,
movie.
yes, that was actually okay. That
Mm-hmm.
was where the kid had lost his brother or his twin and was seeking out, and the guy was fighting his gift. I mean, I thought that
I
was
thought
okay.
that was excellent. Actually, a former guest that we've had, and my friend Allison Dubois was one of the consultants on that movie, and I thought they really, hit the nail on the head because it's just when you have a gift, it's not so easy to embrace, and there's a struggle
Agreed.
with it. That's how you really know it could be a gift when there's a double-edged sword. Now, I'm wondering for you, because I know, a couple of people that we know, like let's say Glenn Dove, when he was, I guess, younger, George Anderson predicted his success. John had Lydia Clark, who he came to, it was
Yes.
like a tarot card reading, and she predicted him. Did you have anyone that saw you from a younger age who
I
might
had
have predicted your success or
I had
prepared you?
I had 3 people. I had, like, a godmother I grew up with. She
Mm,
was, she's still around, so I shouldn't say
mm,
she was. She basically was an old-time
mm,
spiritualist, and she would go into trance, and she would bring through, her spirit guide who would speak fluent Spanish, and I used to sit on the table with them when I was younger,
mm,
and I would get messages. And then as I got into college, I met these 2 ladies that I called my aunts, and they were trumpet mediums, which
mm,
is no one knows what a trumpet medium. It doesn't mean that you're like
mm.
playing a trumpet, but these are. I went to spiritual camp with them. I did a lot of things, but those 2 people, 3 people, were very significant in my development for what I am today.
Those like the sisters, I think you referred to in your
Yes,
book, or
they were
some, yeah.
they used to yell at me. They were tough on me, they wanted we would sit and do, seances probably twice a week, 3 times a week.
Mm,
We would have to prepare. They would get really, really mad at me if I didn't,
mm.
prepare. We went through a whole thing. You didn't eat, you would fast, then we would eat afterwards. But they would kind of adopted me. They were amazing ladies.
It was like psychic boot camp for
It
yourself.
was totally, and they sent. I remember we went to this camp. There's a camp in Pennsylvania. I don't even know if it's there anymore. It's called Camp Chesterfield, and
Mm,
that's where the old, what we call a trumpet medium, is kind of
mm.
like when you see a cheerleader with you
The
know,
horn or whatever. Yeah.
the
Okay.
horn. That's what a trumpet medium is. And when you sit and you go to one of these things, it's complete darkness. And
Mm,
all of a sudden you see the trumpet going around the room and you hear voices. I mean, I was more skeptical because the mediumship has evolved where when
mm,
you say seance, it's not like you're sitting holding hands singing
mm.
kumbaya. It's totally different now.
Wow. So
You
to
know,
have that support, that must have, I mean, that's must have been helpful to know
oh,
that, hey,
they were amazing with me. I mean, they went through growing pains. I remember that was when I was first starting out,
mm,
and they kept pushing me. They're like, "Don't get a real job."
mm,
This is what you're supposed to do. And then I used to do house parties, and I remember going all over the place. I
mm,
would go as far as South Jersey. Everywhere I went in different
mm.
places, and it ended up being, that's how I got my reputation. And then, doing radio, and
Right.
once we did the radio, and that, I started to do that. I got an agent actually. A friend of mine was a booking agent, and he was involved with the police and Sting,
Mm,
and they had an agency with Stuart Copeland called Frontier Booking. It was called FBI, which I thought was kind of cool. And
mm.
Scott used to get me bookings. Like, he put me on radio with people. I was
Wow.
on. I got the Bob Grant show.
Mm,
Uh, I got to meet all these celebrities through them, which was kind of interesting, and read for them.
mm,
So it was like really different, but that's like once you're on radio and you're able to do it on the radio and you connect, things take off. That's like when I love doing Instagram live because
mm.
I can pull a person up. And the Facebook live is okay, but it's not as fun as doing the Instagram live because you get the one-on-one. Usually when I do it on a Sunday night, people are in their bed, or they're in their pajamas or whatever. It gets to be very entertaining.
Is that something that you get a joy out of like connecting to people and just,
Yeah.
it seems like you just like to connect. You're like a people person to a degree.
Oh, I
You
love,
know.
absolutely. And it's fun when you do the Instagram because you don't know. It's not censored. I mean, all the years we did
Right.
LAR, we never had a button where I could dump somebody. So all the
Mm.
years that we did it, no one ever cursed, which surprised me. Now, of course, when you do radio, you could, you edit it, of course. We record the calls, but back in the day, we never recorded the calls. We went live.
Yeah, and it's what you see the kids like in the background. They're in their homes, and
Yeah.
oftentimes you pick up on like the little infants and how they're feeling and how they relate to the parent and what they're going through. So you're able to see the people in the real and raw environment. So
Yes,
it's really cool.
it's all the above.
Yeah. Let me ask you, have you also been able throughout your years to potentially train, any intuitives or mediums or pick up on someone who have had, the gift like that's happened to you or
No, I
um,
haven't. I've stayed away from it. I've gotten a lot of offers to teach. I'm really not interested in teaching right now.
mm, yes.
Um, for me, I just don't see the point in it.
Mm,
To me, I teach by doing what I do. And like
mm,
I said to you before, it scares me because there's so many people that come out of the woodwork now,
mm.
and it's like it is what it is, and it's just not something I'm ready to do yet. I'm not comfortable with it.
I see. So, I mean, I made a post the other day that, just because you're not a professional psychic does not mean that you're not psychic or you don't have intuitive abilities. Would you agree to an extent that we all have some degree of intuition in us? And if so, like how do you
100%.
feel we could,
Well,
maybe
I think you do that.
decipher that? Yeah.
I think you do that through meditation. Classic example:
Mm,
police officer. Police officer goes around the block, okay, and gets
mm,
a feeling and goes back to a certain place, and there's a crime committing. That's intuition. I always
mm,
tell people it's a fine line between your intuitive self and your neurotic self. Your neurotic
mm,
self, okay, is the upper half of your stomach. The
mm.
intuitive side is the lower half.
The
That's the gut.
lower. Yeah.
And that's the part that you really connect with. But that's an example. Or you think, classic example. Hey, I'm thinking of you today, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from you.
Mm, mm,
That's totally intuitive. That's all the above.
mm. So, like anything else, you would say it's a muscle that you could work and understand, and the more that you connect to it, the more it could become a part of your life as an asset.
Yes, 100%. Some people are more comfortable with it, other people are not.
Mm,
I try to demystify the
mm,
fact that it's not so spooky,
mm,
you know, but it's like anything else today. It's like you just gotta be careful because like what you said, a lot of these people that put, their thing out and they put their,
mm.
they start doing it, they're not really qualified to do it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
There's
And so people.
no way of regulating it because, you know, I think it's more important by reputation. Like, I give John Edward a lot of credit. John and I started around the
Mm,
same time.
mm,
John's always kept to a high standard. John took a beating
mm,
when he first started doing TV, because of the fact they were like, oh, people are filling out questionnaires or whatever it
mm,
was in the studio. He must be getting information. He went through a lot of stuff. I give him a lot
mm.
of credit. And he stayed true to his brand. He stayed true to who he is. Not
Right.
everybody does that.
Yeah, I mean, he and Sylvia were one of the first like mainstream platform mediums to go on
Yeah.
television. You got to give them credit. They broke a lot of ground. They took a lot of shots to the
Great.
chin,
Well,
but
I mean, I think the
yeah.
problem with Sylvia is I always respected Sylvia,
Mm,
but as Sylvia got older, I think she became more Hollywood, and that got her into trouble. And like when you do missing kids, you better be
mm,
180% sure that
mm.
person's passed because
Right.
you can't say stuff. And I remember she got in trouble, or they went after her for saying something, where the kid was not passed. So
Mm.
you got to know, it's better to say, with something like that, you got to really know because you're being responsible for what you say.
Right. I mean, these are real lives and real hopes in the line. And for some of these people, they're drowning, and your words could be something for them to hold on to. And if it's false hope, I mean, geez, how do they rebound from that? They're in a worse situation than before, and that's not the intention at all of this work. Hopefully,
No, I mean,
uh,
hopefully, as I said, it varies. There's
mm,
different people, different aspects. There's a fine line. I like working with therapists and stuff. If I get something, usually I get referrals from somebody who deals with grief.
Mm-hmm.
I have groups and stuff like that refer me, which is very nice, very honorable. But I tell people sometimes, we can stop ourselves from growing. We can stop ourselves from making good choices. That's why I think you need to interact with the therapist and have the therapy part of this involved so that you're able to complete the journey in the process.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that part of your book where you included how you work with other therapists, because a lot of mediums kind of stay in their lane, but understanding grief is psychological as much as it could be, seeing a medium. So to have both working hand in hand, I think is helpful as a therapist myself. So I really am grateful that you've noticed that.
I think that's so important. I kind of look at it like when you have an ice cream sundae. You're doing vanilla ice cream and you're doing the chocolate sauce and you're doing nuts or whipped cream, and then I'm the cherry. So I look at it from the point that, when you get to that point, you're ready to really have closure and do the work.
Right.
And then you're home free.
I'm sure a lot of people who have known you throughout the years would see you as more than that, but you're a very humble man.
Well,
Certainly.
I appreciate that.
We've mentioned a lot of different people from Long Island, and I'm just wondering because, whether that's George Anderson, Glenn Dove, yourself, Laura Lynn Jackson, like what is it about James Van Prague from Queens? Like what is it about this area, that has led to so many, different influential mediums in one small pocket? I'm wondering.
I think it's just the energy. I mean, I'm originally from Queens, so I'm in the Queens thing. Then we moved out here. So, I mean, I'm not an official Long Island resident.
I'm saying like the New York, Queens area, though.
Yeah, I grew up in Astoria. So I think James grew up in Bayside.
In Queens, he's in Bayside,
Yeah, so that's what I said. So I know John, I think, was in Glen Cove.
Right.
And then Glenn is what, Baldwin or?
Well, Glenn's originally from Queens as well, too. So, yeah, around the tri-state area, though, whether that's Long Island or the city. And granted, we have a ton of people here, but also, there's a lot of mediums, who have a lot of influence in the world. So I'm just wondering, what about this pocket? Maybe that it's surrounded by water could be.
I think it might be the water on Long Island more than anything else. It's the energy. It's a little bit of both. It's a combination. I mean, I think we all have it. And I just think some people are more in tune than others. There was a gentleman that I was very close with. Raymond was, his name was Raymond Perro. He was a psychic in Manhattan. And he was a character. You would go to his loft, you go upstairs, and there would be a picture of him in a fur coat. And he would sit with these like mini cigars that he would smoke one right after the other. And he would take a pad and he would write stuff. And I must have been, I don't forget, I was dating a girl at the time. She's like, come on, let's go. And it was like still early in my development. And I remember seeing him and he writes on a pad. He holds up writer, media, intuitive. And I just looked at him. And then he underlined the thing. He goes, but you really should have been a psychiatrist. He goes, because of that, he goes, you have a lot more patience than I will because he goes, I used to tell women their eggs are dry and it's time to move on. He goes, you're more compassionate. I said, well, okay. But it was funny. And I remember that experience. And like he would just look at you and he would write on his pad.
Wow. And this is before any of this started to become public.
Really. I mean, Raymond lived on Grove Street and I would, he became a friend. I would go visit him and stuff and he would write on a pad, and he was funny. He was very comedic. Like he had a lot of people that wanted to do TV. We had him do radio with us a couple of times, but he really, wasn't comfortable in the spotlight. He should have been a reality show because he was such a character and a half. He adopted kids. He had a partner, that he was with, and he would adopt kids. And then he would tell me stories about, when he would do stuff. And he was a character and a half, Raymond. He was something else. I always loved him. It was just, he was so genuine. And it's like a lot of the people that do it sometimes are not so genuine. Like they get caught up in it. You can't go near them. You can't talk to them. It's like, get over it.
Right. I mean, I certainly think that's a part of your success, that people, yes, you're, very connected and gifted, but also you have the energy of your personality and your humor and just how grounded you are. And I think that, that's all a part of your gift as well. for anyone. It's not just, don't ignore your personality or your creative side or just your ability to be empathetic, whatever, gifts you have within your personality. I think that's to be brought to the table in any line of work. And I think that's also part of your continuity of success in this too, I would say, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah.
That's probably part of it. I wouldn't disagree with you. I think it's that ability to connect. It's sad sometimes, when I do TV and I was doing a lot of more, I get letters. Like I got letters from prison. Please help me. I was framed. I got letters from murderers. You really know what happened. Can you help me? And then I would get, when my book was published in Spanish, I started getting letters from people in Mexico.
Wow.
Please, and South America, please help me. My family was taken by the cartel. They disappeared. Can you help me find the body? Because unfortunately, when the cartel kills you, you disappear.
Wow. Yeah.
You get these intensity things, and they're begging me, please, please, please. And it's sad. You get stuff like that. I mean, I've worked murders. I've worked missing kids. I feel the pain. I know the connection of losing somebody on that level. It's heavy, 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 heavy duty.
I mean, early on, would you come home from doing these readings and sometimes just sob or cry or get very
I get emotional now. All of a sudden, I release. I notice that with me. I'll absorb. And you have to watch also, because it's very easy to pick up energies. Like you start getting suicides. You start getting those thoughts because you pick up that energy, and you got to be aware of how to get rid of that energy.
So for you, you have your own techniques to kind of protect yourself.
I clear. I mean, I find with me, which is my downfall, I don't drink. I mean, once in a while I might have a drink, but I'm not a drinker by any means. Food is my thing. So
likewise,
when I get crazy or I get overtired or overwhelmed, I'm more OCD with the eating, which is not good. And that's all from the mediumship, because I'm feeding the emotions, and that's not good.
Right. You take on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, take a lot of the garbage on. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I had a young man who killed himself, and I started getting that vibe, and I'm like, I kept hearing in my head, well, why don't you kill yourself too? And it's leftover energy. That's the problem.
Right. The food thing could also be a Taurus thing, because I struggle with that all my life, and it's a work in progress. But yeah, it's interesting. My last couple questions have to do with dreams. I know you wrote an entire book on dreams. I mean, you're a fascinating person, because you don't just talk about the medium stuff, the psychic stuff, you do the radio, but you also talk about dreams, which is something that I'm asked a lot.
Yeah, I interpret dreams. Absolutely.
That's fascinating how many parts, and gears you have to Jeffrey Wands. But maybe you could speak on like a couple of common dreams that people may have, or how dreams work. Are they there for us to connect to our loved ones?
I think it's a mix. I'll give you, this is one of my classics. You dream that your teeth are falling out. Okay, that's not a good dream. That deals with sickness. Doesn't mean you're dying. It just means that somebody or in the family is going to have some sort of major health issue. Another common one, I tell people, you get this one, go out and buy a lotto ticket. You're out in a snowstorm in a bathing suit. Okay. And it's coming down, when you get one of those blizzards. I actually had a client, she had a dream. Her dead father-in-law came through. Italian family. He was in a Speedo, God forbid. Okay. And in this middle of snowstorm, and then he, in the snow, wrote out 8 numbers or whatever, and they actually hit the Mega Millions.
Jeez, well, I'm hoping to have those dreams soon.
You know what I'm saying? And that was that. But there's different elements. Sometimes, yes, they would be psychological. You do get visitations from people. It's not uncommon. You can tell when you have that kind of connection or that base. It's a major base, especially on an emotional level, because the difference. Like when you get a visit and you get that aspect, it's heavy, heavy duty.
Would you say that's also like a brain thing too? Because the brain's going to the deeper states of relaxation, and then it's more open to the other side?
Oh, 100%. But there is a difference between a visit and a dream. A dream is usually, about something, that you're going through every day in your life, and the symbolism. Okay. Like if you see, clear water, that's a good omen. If you see water that's clouded, that's not a good omen. Another classic dream, you're on a boat, you're on a sailboat, and you hit shore. That's never good. You know, where you hit rocks, that means there's going to be some sort of major catastrophe in your life.
Wow. And this comes to you intuitively, or this is something that you studied also with,
No,
psychological?
it comes intuitively.
Wow. 'Cause, I mean, I know obviously there's Carl Jung dream interpreters and there's people study it and read it, but for you, this is all down. That's
And you know
fascinating.
what? If you have a dream where a dog is hugging you, that means that's really, really good. That means that you have really good friends in your life.
Yeah. Those
And
are
then
those must be good.
the other classic dream is you're looking outside a window and you're looking outside, but you're looking through the blinds. Okay, but you don't see anything. That's a classic dream of infidelity.
Wow. So a
So
lot of times dreams aren't logically what you would interpret them. There's
no.
many times it could be the polar opposite.
Yeah, like if you dream you're pregnant, it means that there's going to be a death. If you dream that there's a death, then that means it's going to be pregnant. It's kind of a metaphor on words, but you know the idea of death connected to pregnancy means that there's a new soul coming in. So that's why it comes up that way.
Wow. So for viewers who are having dreams who want to learn a little bit more, remind me again, what is the name of your book regarding dreams that
But you
my
go
viewers
on,
can
it's on my
purchase?
website. It's just basically an ebook that we did, put it together fast, and it gives you some symbolism. I mean, you know, it's basic. I didn't like do a major in-depth thing.
Right.
I took some symbols of some things I knew, and I put it from there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Jeff, we're, running towards the end of our conversation. I'm just wondering, because we're heading, right now we are in the Hanukkah season and Christmas
Yes.
coming up and Kwanzaa around the corner. Certainly, it's a joyous time for a lot of people, but also, as we know, grief, is there heightened? Is there any, throughout your years of work, like any messages that you have towards your grief in the afterlife that maybe you would like to share around this time regarding our loved
Well,
ones and what we're going through?
I think, people say all the time about Halloween, the fact that Halloween's the most haunted. It's not. It's a Hallmark holiday. November 1st is a bigger deal because that's the Day of the Dead, which in Spanish cultures they celebrate. So, I mean, I tell people with the holidays, they're close by. They're always close by. For them, it's a holiday on the other side. Every day is a holiday. So when we're going through stuff, I mean, I actually wanted to do a dead cooking show where I bring relatives through to like make latkes or spaghetti sauce and say, here, this is grandma's recipe, and then like connect with them afterwards. I think that would be a lot of fun.
That would be great. And I'm sure viewers hearing this, it's important to know that there may be an empty chair, but it does not mean that your loved one is not, there with you at your table. They're around you, as you said.
100%.
So Jeff, I know you're, right here in Port and you're also in Florida.
Yes.
Do you have any, for viewers listening, do you have any upcoming events down the pipeline, here in Long Island, or
we have a bunch of stuff that's up on the website.
On the website.
Yeah, I'm doing a thing for the ladies auxiliary fire department that's out. That'll be in January. I have a bunch of restaurants I'm doing. I have stuff in Florida I'm doing. So I like to bounce around. Yeah. So, I'm gonna be doing more stuff, but I'm spending more and more time in Florida. So that's kind of I'm pulled to the energy there. I like the water.
Yeah, the Boca box, right? And a lot of the Boca
Yeah, the black box. And
box, yeah.
And I did the energy room, which is a cool thing. If you get down to Boca, you should check that out.
Do check it out. Jeffrey is amazing. Jeffrey, now for people wanting to book a reading with you or to purchase one of your incredible
books, go online and go to my website.
It's jeffreywands.com, is that?
Yes, correct.
You're also on Facebook and Instagram,
you'll see me on Sunday nights usually. So
well,
I didn't do Instagram last night. I did do Facebook.
Yeah.
Because we were having technical problems because we're approaching Mercury in retrograde and the internet, went down a bit. So it took me a while. So by the time I got on, I was able to do just Facebook. I wanted to do Instagram last night.
Yeah. So you're just like this energizer bunny that keeps on going. I mean, for you, after doing all these years, is there something in particular that keeps you going? Is it maybe seeing the information that comes through and the change of the loved one that you're with? Like for you, like what keeps you after all these years?
I think it's giving people closure and letting them know that their loved ones are there. And I enjoy it, but it's hard. Like, you help people, you wake people up from their coma sometimes and make them aware, hey, Aunt Sue's there, Uncle Harry's there, Grandpa Ted's there. You don't need to worry. They hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. Thank you for all you do, your incredible service. The universe chose a wonderful one with you, and I'm just honored to call you friend and a colleague and someone that I have a great deal of respect for. So, Jeffrey Wands, an honor to have you here on my channel. You're welcome back anytime. And viewers, do check out Jeffrey Wands. He's incredible. Check out his books. If you're interested in reading, do check that out, as well as events. And Jeffrey, thank you so much for your generous time and coming here on my channel.
Thank you, Jacob. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, that was a wonderful interview. I'm glad to bring on my colleague, Jeffrey Wands, here on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. He's an incredible medium, so if you're interested in connecting to a loved one, I highly recommend checking him out, as well as his upcoming events, which we will do in the future, as we've done in the past. But I know that was a loaded conversation, and we're able to really understand Jeffrey's trajectory, how his gift became a gift and not just a burden. We spoke a lot about loved ones on either side and where they are and how maybe we could connect to them. They're getting a little bit more quiet. So just remember, we all have a gift. We all have the ability to connect, and it's just getting out of our own way and trusting, that voice within and our connection to the hereafter. So I thank Jeffrey Wands for coming on, and I thank you all for tuning in. And I wish you all a wonderful upcoming holiday season. And I hope that this interview in this conversation gave you a little bit of strength, and confidence to move forward during this time of, intensified grief that many are experiencing, to know that we're never alone. We have loved ones connected to us. So please make sure you continue to stay a part of the community, hit that subscribe button, and we hope to see you next week here on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'll also be posting my own segment about this upcoming year and the holiday season from my own perspective, and I'll be trying to do a little bit more of these as time comes. So hope you could follow up my own videos coming your way, and I hope it's helpful with you on your spiritual journey. But this is Jacob Cooper signing off here on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Wonderful conversation with Jeffrey Wands, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for staying tuned.